Diane, you have to do yours.
All set? Diane, you good?
Recording in progress.
Okay, welcome to the February 1st Swampscott Select Board meeting. Before we get started, if you will join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, before we get started, I'm going to open it up to public comment. Public comment is an opportunity for members of the public to express their opinions on items both on and not on the official agenda. Public comment is not intended to be a discussion, debate, or dialogue between or among the Select Board and residents. Additionally, before sharing your comment, we ask residents to state their names, address, and if known, their voting precinct. Each speaker will be limited to speaking once for a maximum of 3 minutes. Residents may raise new issues, identify community problems, and comment on past, present, or future board agendas. Absent extraordinary circumstances, the board will not respond or react to the issues raised, and they should not be discussed or debated at that time. We request residents speak respectfully and refrain from criticizing or disparaging individual committee members, town staff, or other resident groups or individuals. And we request that residents refrain from making comments that contain political statements or include commentary, criticisms, or other statements about any town staff. Individuals speak at the discretion of the chair. Is there any public comment either in the room or on Zoom? And if people have public comment they want to share through email, they can send an email to me at nduffy, D-U-F-F-Y, at swampscottma.gov. Seeing none, we'll move on to our first agenda item, which is the reading of the Black History Month proclamation. And we have some friends from Shore who are going to help us with this presentation. I believe I'm handing it over to Ralph first, or?
First of all, thank you for this, for the recognition of Black History Month, and for this opportunity to read the proclamation of the Select Board. Black History Month. Whereas February is Black History Month, and we call upon the citizens and public and local officials of the town of Swampscott to honor the history and achievements of Black Americans and to reflect on the centuries of struggle that have brought us to this historic moment of time, to live up to the founding principles of our nation and the town of Swampscott, that all people are created equal and have the right to be treated equally throughout their lives.
Whereas this observance affords a special opportunity to become more knowledgeable about Black heritage, to honor Black citizens who have contributed to Swampscott's economic, cultural, spiritual, and political development.
Yep, we'll keep on. Oh, we have microphones, so you guys can keep it. We may circle back around. So whereas after the Civil War, exodusters migrated from the South and settled in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. They brought with them the desire for economic opportunities, freedom from oppression and harassment, and freedom to create their own lives. These settlers played an important role in settling the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and the town of Swampscott, as well as the rest of the United States.
And whereas in 1915, Dr. Carter Goodwin Woodson, noted Black scholar and son of former slaves, founded the Association for the Study of Negro Life and History, which was later renamed the Association for the Study of African American Life and History. And
whereas Dr. Woodson initiated Black History Week, February 12th, 1926, and for many years, the second week of February, chosen to coincide with the birthdays of Frederick Douglass and Abraham Lincoln, was celebrated by Black peoples in the United States. And
Whereas in 1976, as part of the nation's bicentennial, Black History Week was expanded and became established as Black History Month and is now celebrated all over North America, Canada, and Europe. And
Whereas, while the observance of Black History Month calls our town's attention to the continued need to battle racism and to build a society that lives up to its democratic ideals, this year's celebration and recognition of Black History Month are especially significant as we reflect on the historic challenges facing our community and the nation at this time. And
whereas we acknowledge that Black history is American history, stories and facts fully interwoven in the political, economic, cultural, scientific, and democratic fabric that make up our great nation.
Whereas the town of Swampscott continues to be anguished by the murder of George Floyd, and since George Floyd's murder by police, 181 Black people in the U.S. have been killed by the police, according to data from the research group Mapping Police Violence. Most recently, Tarai Nichols, it remains a shocking failure that many Black people, especially Black men and women, are unfairly harassed and threatened and unjustly treated in Swampscott and our nation. And
whereas we are proud to celebrate Black History Month and pledge our continued commitment to build a welcoming community, one that reflects the fullest talents and diversity of the American people, and that celebrates Swampscott's second Juneteenth celebration, among other efforts by Swampscott and broader community that is committed to building a future that is inclusive and ready to confront deep racial inequities and the systemic racism that continue to plague our community and nation. And
whereas the town of Swampscott commits to doing everything in our power to demand that we all seek a greater understanding and implement changes to ensure that racism, anti-Semitism, and the unjust treatment of any person is not tolerated in any way or form within the town of Swampscott.
Whereas Swampscott unites, respects, embraces diversity, will host a Black History Month celebration on Monday, February 27th at 7 p.m. at First Church to share important conversations about Swampscott's Black history and work to build a more inclusive community.
now, therefore, the town of Swampscott hereby establishes that February 2023 will be Black History Month in the town of Swampscott, Massachusetts, and encourage all faith-based and nonprofit organizations, residents, businesses, civic and public institutions to acknowledge, honor, value, and celebrate Black citizens, and celebrate our diverse heritage and culture, and continue our efforts to create a world that is more just, peaceful, and prosperous for all.
in witness whereof we have here unto set our hands and cause to be affixed the great seal of the town of Swampscott, Massachusetts, this first day of February 2023. Neil Duffy, Select Board Chair, David Grishman, Vice Chair, Katie Phelan, Board Member, Peter Spelios, Board Member, Mary Ellen Fletcher, Board Member, and Sean Fitzgerald, Town Administrator.
All right. Ralph, can you share a few comments about the event that Sure is having, and perhaps a few comments about the importance of... All right.
They want to share the load. So this will be our second Black History Month celebrating Black history is our history. Last year it was on Zoom. This year it will be in person. So we have, again, we have our Evening of Poetry featuring Enzo Surin, the award-winning Swampscott poet. We also will have Nancy Schultz, who is going to talk about Swampscott history, Black history. She's on the Historic Commission. Our panelists include Rabbi Michael Rogozin, Pastor Ian Holland, Heidi Weir, who's Director of our Aging Services, and also Tristan Smith, who was one of the candidates. So they'll be and Jim Bixby, who is a Marblehead Lutheran Church, and on their racial justice team will be the moderator. And the Swampscott High School Chorus is going to start off the event. So we'd like everyone to come. It also will be on Facebook Live. Thank you.
Well, thank you. That sounds like a wonderful event, and certainly, something that I think, many Swampscott citizens will benefit from, and really appreciate all the work that Shura is doing, but certainly appreciate the fact that you have come out tonight to kick off Black History Month. It sounds like a perfect way to kind of round out the month, but certainly lots for us to think about in the weeks intervening. Our library is full of information about Black history, and certainly would encourage folks to really go to the library and learn more about, some of our extraordinary contributions that Black citizens have made since the inception of this nation. Thank you.
Anything from board members?
And the rec department is providing arts and crafts related to Black history for people to pick up at Town Hall
That's
weekly.
right. Yep.
I just want to thank you all for being here in particular, and if you haven't had the chance to hear Enzo Surin read his poetry, you should hear him read his poetry. I didn't get to do it in person. We did it online last time Enzo joined us, and his book, My Body as a Clenched Fist, is now an award-winning book. He's a Swampscott resident and just a gift. And so if you haven't had a chance to hear him or read him, I really encourage you to. I would also just applaud things that I'm hearing from the Swampscott Public Schools about Black History Month and things that they're talking about there as well, as we face an increased, an inexplicable attack on Black history curriculum and history, as if Black history is anything but history. It is so important that we all find opportunities to make sure we're talking about it with our children, with each other in this board. We started in a pretty tumultuous time. We started a dialogue about race that, frankly, I feel as though we haven't been as successful continuing, and I hope that we do pick it back up, because I think we have unfinished business. I know we have unfinished business, and I'm just using this occasion to remind myself of that, amongst others. You can't move on until there's acknowledgement of issues, and you can't pretend issues don't exist. And our community, like all communities, have to face issues, and as other places around the country seem to be doing much more draconian and hateful things, it doesn't make our challenges any less important for us to confront and to work on ourselves. But I do want to thank the Swampscott Public Schools for their outreach and their participation in Black History Month and Black history, and their recognition that Black history is history.
Thanks, Peter. Anything else? Thank you all for coming. Appreciate it. Looking forward to the event.
Appreciate it.
Joe, I'm louder than I normally am. Is that intentional? Okay. Okay. It's not pleasing.
To your ears.
To my own ear.
Imagine how we feel.
That's the problem. That's all I'm imagining the whole
All
time.
meeting along, getting
Yeah.
further self-conscious.
I'm so sorry. Yeah. So moving on to the next item is the signing of the road acceptance document for Supreme Court. We have gone through all the necessary procedures to get to this point, which was we referred the acceptance of Supreme Court as a public way to the Planning Board. They, in Public Works, verified that it was fit to be a public way. We then voted to lay out the road, if you will, and that went to town meeting. Town meeting has accepted the road as a public way. So the final step is for the select board to essentially execute an order of taking, if you will, of the road, which we have before us tonight to authorize and to sign. So I don't know if anyone has any questions about this.
I'll make a motion. I'll move that the select board vote to accept Supreme Court as a public way and execute an order of taking as drafted by town council, and further request town council to record the order of taking with the Essex South Registry of Deeds.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great. Thank you. Next, we have a discussion and potential vote on an extension of Anchor Food Pantry's use and occupancy agreement. I think we have Laura Spathanis with us. She's raising her hand. Diane, if you can bring her up. So Anchor Food Pantry had a one-year occupancy agreement with the town. It expires in May. As part of that agreement, they were required to notify us 4 months prior to the expiration of the agreement that their interest in renewing, which they've done, and that's what brings us here tonight. And with that, I will hand it over to Laura to add anything else that I may have missed. If you have any words that you want to share, I'm happy to give you the microphone.
You're on mute, Laura.
Thank you. Hi, all. Nice to see you again. I wish I could have come down in person, but we are actually open this evening from 6 to 8. So I'm here working and greeting our visitors and helping out. So I will, if you don't mind me just taking a few minutes to kind of let you know what we've done.
Of course,
over the
please.
last year and what's been happening at Anchor. Really drive home the need for this resource and what we offer to the town. So reflecting as I wrote the letter to you all, but we reflect monthly at our board meetings. When going back to 2020, when we first opened in March of 2020, at the very beginning of the pandemic, through this last summer, maybe June, we were seeing maybe between 40 and 50 families a month coming through the doors. Some come every week, some come every other week, but unique families between 40 to 50. Since the summer, with gas prices on the rise, grocery prices, now recently some benefits are being taken away. We are seeing, since July, every month, 80 to 85 families a month, doubled. So that just really, I just want to share with you in the town right now how important it is. To have this facility and to have the support of the community. Every night, every day we're open, we have new people who are, really struggling and trying to make, have the means to get by.
Laura, do you have what you need to provide to those families? Like, do you all have enough supplies? Do you have enough volunteers? Is everything in order as far as that goes?
Again, up through July, we really did. Right now, so over the last 6 months, we really struggled to keep having enough food to get through each week. We did have to remodel our service plan to limit more items here in order to be able to really stretch it through the month. For example, this is everywhere. This is across the country. It's across the Commonwealth. We receive monthly from Greater Boston.
No, we lost you, Laura.
We lost you. Hold on. Hold on a sec, Laura. I don't think it's on your end. I think it's on ours.
Oh, hold on, Laura, we still can't hear you.
Come on.
Right, there you
Can
go.
hear me?
Now we
There
can,
we go.
Okay. Diane O'Brien, one of our board members, is now kind of champion monthly food drives within the community. So again, this community is amazing. So schools, different church programs are doing monthly food drives for us to really supplement the items that we need.
what, are there specific items that you're in need of more than others? Should we get the word out in that way? Or are there other items that you don't need? that you,
Nothing that we don't need. It really varies. It does vary depending on what Greater Boston has, you know, for us. But those staples, cereals, granola bars, peanut butter, household cleaning products, personal hygiene products, those are really the items that are hard to get and hard to keep on the shelves.
And Laura, if someone wants to make a cash donation, how can they do that?
So we are on Facebook, and we have anchorfoodpantry.com. You can mail us a check here at 86 Farwell Street, or we have a PayPal account. Either or is helpful. You know, we do, besides being open, we're open twice a week. Folks can come once a week to visit us. We're open Monday mornings and Wednesday evenings, but also through the year, we do a huge Thanksgiving meal. We provide, we do back-to-school backpacks for our students. We partner with Spur. We recently, thanks to a donation from the Swampscott, I'm gonna get this wrong, the Swampscott Yacht Club that did the polar plunge, we were able to purchase a commercial refrigerator this last year, so that allows us to provide bread, eggs, cheese, and more fresh, you know, fruits and veggies.
That's
but
great.
Again, those are things we have to be able to get in order to give those.
Well, thanks so much for everything you've all been doing, you know, and for seeing the need in the first place. I'm sorry that you're so busy because it's a reflection of the need, but also so thankful that you're there
Yeah.
And able to provide.
Just speaking of that, sorry, I won't keep you guys long.
No problem.
Just talking about the need, I'm going to be on a panel this month. I'll share it with Diane. Maybe she can share it on the town website. And it's with some other area leaders of food insecurity organizations, as well as with Senator Brendan Crichton. And we're going to have a panel and a discussion on how to advance and be innovative in food security and be able to eliminate this, right? The point for us is to be here, you know, right now we're really being reactive and providing folks with what they need, but we really want to come up with a way that they can be food secure and they don't have a need for this pantry. That's
Right.
my hope someday, is we don't have to come here and we don't have to do this. So I'll share that, if you don't mind, with the town. It will be a great opportunity, and we can come together and really come up with some ideas in this area.
Yeah, please do.
Allow folks to become more secure. And again, thank you guys. You're amazing. All of you are great. Your support here, each of you, individually and as a board, in just the town. Max Casper, he's amazing. He's helped as the facilities manager. He's always here to help us and support us, and we just thank you.
That's great. Well, thank you. Any other questions or comments for Laura? Is there a motion to authorize and approve the use and occupancy agreement with Anchor Food Pantry?
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Laura.
Thanks, Laura.
Laura, thank you.
Great to see you. Thank
Great to
you
see
very
you.
much.
Have a great night.
Yep, you too. Bye-bye.
Okay. All right. Next is I think this is probably both items 4 and 5 on the agenda. We have discussion of the second quarter of fiscal 23's budget and also a discussion of the fiscal year 24 budget prep. I think we have special guests Amy Sorrow and Patrick Letty here with us to take us through that. So I'll hand it over to you guys and to Sean.
All right. Well, we certainly have been monitoring the FY23 budget, as I think the board has become accustomed to know that, we do monthly reports. We look at end-of-year projections on monthly reviews. We have 10 years worth of historical data, so we basically know the trends. So if we see trends popping up early in the fiscal year, we take action to try to use as much of the months ahead to really address some challenges. This year, frankly, we have both our police and fire budgets that are trending high in overtime. There are reasons for that. Some are, frankly, out of our control, and they deal with personnel matters, but some are within our control, and both chiefs have taken steps. With that, both Amy Sauer, our Director of Finance and Administration, and Patrick Letty, our Treasurer, will step through our expenditure year-to-date second quarter and revenue year-to-date second quarter, and give us a sense of where we are today and where we are projecting to wind up on June 30th. Lots of conversations are ongoing to help manage month to month, and certainly appreciate both Patrick and Amy's diligence. They have been meeting with department heads as well as we address many of these challenges. With that, Amy, why don't you take us through the presentation?
I have one slide before I hand it over to Patrick. So as Sean said, sorry, next slide. We are going to do an overview of halfway through the year, our revenue and expenditures, highlight some areas of concern, specifically in the police and fire overtime line, and then give a quick update on how we are working on the FY24 budget development. With that, I will turn it over to our treasurer for revenue.
Thanks, Amy. So on the screen, the next two slides are a summary of our major revenue categories that we budget for and monitor throughout the year. And this is through the end of December, so we are expecting to see a lot of our lines at about 50% of budget. There are certain lines that may not be there. For example, motor vehicle excise and local receipts. That's because excise tax bills go out in the third quarter. So that would be something normal we'd expect to see.
Diane, can you move the window up to the top so people can, or even?
That's better. Yep. Real estate taxes.
Maybe,
Actually, if you just can get rid of the window.
yeah, maybe just close it while we're.
There we go.
Perfect.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Great,
Thank you.
Thanks.
Real estate taxes are about 50% of the way there. Meals and rooms tax is exceeding our expectations, which is great to see. Boat excise is also exceeding our expectations. Cannabis sales tax is exceeding our expectations. We have a second facility that came online, so we'll expect to see that to grow. Rental income is also exceeding our expectations. We had expected a lease termination from T-Mobile, but they reneged on that, so we have unbudgeted revenue there. And
What was that?
investing.
Sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
Go back.
Okay.
Verizon, termination, lease.
T-Mobile lease.
Yeah, we got a notice at
T-Mobile.
budget time that the lease was
Lease for what?
the cell tower
Cell tower.
Where's the cell tower?
on the water tower.
There we go. All right.
That was going to be terminated, but they then sent us another notice saying that that was in error, so.
There's a lot of
They took that back.
volatility with
That was an
the
oops.
cellular communication contracts. They've merged with some. We've had licenses that some companies have thought that they were going to get rid of, but frankly, we're still holding on to a few. So we were surprised with T-Mobile. Sprint was a company that also had a tower. We thought they'd just use one, not both, but they're going to use both to help.
Now, is there an opportunity on Archer Street where there was antenna infrastructure already in place?
You know, that's a really important conversation. I think the bigger concern is kind of figuring out the promulgations of signals throughout the entire town. We've had a few issues with both our police department, fire department, but we also have residents that can't dial 911 in certain neighborhoods, and you know, as people cut the cable service, you know, they rely on cell service, and that's a public safety issue. So we have talked about doing a study that just simply helps us appreciate what's the promulgation of all of the major cell carriers and signals, and see if we can find, you know, a few locations in town that actually help us, you know, get the best signal strength. The early indications are that we have to look outside of Swampscott to look at towers that would help address some of those areas in town that really have some of the biggest issues. But we do need a study that can help us see that, you know, based on promulgations in and around town. The geography of the town, the bedrock, the, you know, granite is problematic, and that really creates pockets of degradation for signals.
Thanks, Sean. I'll just step through a couple more of these lines. Recreation receipts is only at 12% received. That's beach sticker permits. We won't see most of that revenue until the end of the year. Licenses and permits is trending significantly up. We've already exceeded budget. That's due to an extraordinary permit we received from Aggregate. They're installing a new crusher, so that's accounted for in there, that permit fee. Fines and forfeits is trending below target. That's primarily parking and traffic enforcement tickets. Investment income is trending up, which we talked about extensively during tax rate setting. And
So is the investment income, that's just simply the interest rates?
correct, on deposits. Yep.
Wow,
And
Pretty good.
Marblehead will be calling you.
makes a difference.
it does. And if you go to the next slide, Diane, here we have interfund adjustments, which is indirect costs that the enterprise fund reimburses to the general fund, so that's right on target. And for enterprise funds, we have sewer receipts and water receipts trending slightly below target. And PEG receipts is on target. We haven't received the second quarter yet, but since this report we have. And solid waste receipts are also on target, which are the bag fees that are now accounted for in an enterprise fund. So overall, we're, I would say, on target net, which is great to see. Next slide, Diane. Just a couple other items that I already touched on, but boat excise was significantly up this year.
Can I go ask about revenue before we leave revenue?
Okay, yeah.
So what line item worries you?
What worries me?
Yeah, on revenue. You can't not have something that's worrying you.
Yeah.
So what is it that's worrying you?
I think fines and forfeits, that was questionable for me. I don't feel we're going to hit that target.
What goes in fines and forfeits?
That's traffic and parking enforcement. So that would be your traffic tickets.
So can I just ask, how come we revised we revised budget FY '23 to 75,000? That's revised from what? Do you remember?
Amy?
That one's consistently been 75,000.
Okay, but in the 3 years you provided to us, we haven't even come close.
Right.
Are we hoping that there's something done differently in our town that's not happening, or what is it that makes you feel bullish about fines?
The police department was not doing a lot of ticketing during COVID because they were allowing people to be in open spaces. So the anticipation was with COVID not being as much of a concern that they would be back out ticketing at a previous level.
So but that hasn't played out yet?
No, it has not.
No.
Okay, thanks.
Was $75,000, I mean, yeah, 75,000, was that normal? pre-COVID?
Prior to 2020, yes.
So we were hitting that.
Yes. Okay. Boat excise, I just want to comment, I did work with the assessor, the prior assessor, Ben Straight, and he updated the tax rolls, so we identified about 75 vessels that were not on the tax roll through registration data, updated registration data, so that's been updated, and so we'll expect to see boat excise probably double going forward. And the Public Works Department, we received one-time funds from National Grid. They did a lot of utility upgrades in the past 2 years, and they did a lot of street opening. And so to get more paving accomplished with those dollars, National Grid did a payment in lieu of paving. So we paved under our contract with the money that they would have otherwise used to pay their contractor, and we accomplished much more paving instead of patchwork. It was, Gino could explain it better, but that was a big accomplishment. And
Wait, Patrick, I have a quick question on the boat excise. When you
Sure.
said that we went back and we recaptured, so when somebody registers a boat, it doesn't automatically go into?
no, so the Ben Straight, the former assessor, put in a request to DEP and got all the registration, the updated registration data, and it was apparent to me and him that may have not been done in a while.
So is that an annual basis thing going forward?
Yes. Yep. And the aggregate permit I already discussed. And notably on this, cannabis impact fees, we budgeted $90,000 last year for that revenue. We didn't receive any. And legislation has changed, so you can no longer use a percentage of sales to impose an impact fee. You have to identify specific impacts. So at this time, I'm not expecting to collect a particular amount in that category.
I would ask for the town administrator, please, to meet with town council yet again to have a conversation about this. We are doing things that other communities are not doing, even in light of the change in legislation. And I'm going to say that I believe town council has given you the most conservative interpretation, even before the Cannabis Commission has given the interpretation. And I'm at a loss to understand why we decide that we're going to be more conservative than the regulator when it comes to revenue. And it's ridiculous to me. So I would ask to revisit that.
Sure.
And to understand why we are making concessions before the state requires us to make concessions on revenue.
Peter, the discussion that we were given as accountants is that you can still get impact fees. You have to calculate them and actually get an actual expense amount for an entire year, and then essentially bill the cannabis stores the next year for their previous year
So
impact to the town.
I'm aware of what KP law is
Yes.
telling you. I'm just asking that we revisit it because I know of many communities who have received different advice and are collecting different monies and have taken a different strategy. We have taken one of just roll over, quite literally, and I'm confused as to why we would take that strategy. So I would just ask for a future conversation on that.
Absolutely, Peter. I'll work with the finance team in KP and do our best to ensure that we are advocating on behalf of the taxpayers in Swampscott.
Maybe we should get a list of those other towns and find out who they're getting legal advice from.
That sounds like a great idea.
We will do that.
Great.
Next slide.
So along those lines, I just wanted to, I think I had emailed about this, but when Marzi had emailed about the impact fees a while back, and there was a communication with Terpene Journey and they had mentioned in their email that there's like a social equity owned business tax potential for us to capture some of their sales tax because they're technically a social equity owned business. So I think along those lines, if we could look into that, because it sounded like we could maybe get half of their 1% of sales tax or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, we've reached out to state. We're just working with them
Trying to
on
find out.
getting that resolved.
Okay, that's great. Thanks.
Okay. If there's no other questions on year-to-date revenue right now, I will turn it over to Amy and she'll walk you through expenditures.
So this slide is just a very high-level overview of the expenditure report, with notable over 50% on admin and finance, the regional voc tech, and a couple other items, notably like employee benefits. We do have a number of items in those lines that are paid upfront at the start of the year, such as our property casualty insurance, our pension obligation, things like that. So this is on point for where we are historically in the year. I did just want to note that those are higher. And we are almost exactly where we expect to be, 50% through the year, 50.25% through the expenditures.
On some of those expenditures, what's the process as far as sending it out to rebid it?
For?
Like property insurance, casualty, all the insurances?
Yeah, so we can go out at any point. The town administrator and I were speaking earlier about the FY24 budget.
When was the last time it went out to bid?
So we go through Hub. They shop our policies around regularly, but we can shop for a principal company to shop them around as well. So it's as needed.
So when was the last time we did that?
Not in my tenure.
How long have you been here?
3 years.
Wait, to be clear, you're saying that the company we hired has not shopped it around, or we have not shopped?
We have not shopped for companies.
Ah.
So on the next slide, I just wanted to highlight some on-track expenditures. Health insurance, as it's been, a concern the last few years, we're actually projected to be on track this year. We are currently 49.6% through the budget, halfway through the year, which is a much better position than we've been the last 2 years. Our unemployment, which we did drastically reduce the unemployment budget this year, we are projected to be on budget for that. We're averaging only about $1,100 a month in claims. And then below are just a number of departments who are all projected to be on budget, not a concern this year.
I have a question on the unemployment expenses.
Yes.
Is that a large amount as far as claims?
No, this is actually a very low amount.
That's a low amount?
Mm-hmm. And if you'd like, without sharing the actual names, I could give you a count of how many claims we have in any month as well.
That'd be great.
On the next slide are the areas of concern that we're monitoring. So right now, our legal insurance line, the town council and outside council line is about almost 73% expended. Our property and casualty insurance is already overspent due to the additional insurance for the Hawthorne property that was acquired. Our end of employment is already at 91%, but we do have that newly established reserve fund. So this is not actually a concern of this line overexpending this year. Our payroll taxes are trending slightly higher. They're already at almost 54% this year.
Why is that?
It's due to wage increases. So it's a percentage of wages is how that's calculated.
Right, it also has to do with census. I mean, how much higher are we on census? And does this also include teachers?
Mm-hmm. Yep, this is the payroll taxes for the entire
For the
town.
entire town. And then, so do you also look at census, how many more FTE, anybody who's involved in there?
Yep, so,
Can you get us that information too?
yes. Injury for fire and police, you'll notice is 87.46%, but we do front load a lot of those claims at the start of the year. And in the right-hand column is police and fire. So police salaries are already at 54.68%, with overtime at 83% across all the overtime lines. Their expenses are already at 70%. Education incentives are already at 96%, which is the tuition reimbursements that's in their collective bargaining. Mobile radios is at 94%, but that was a front-loaded expense. Uniforms are already overspent at 116% due to new officers. The uniforms that they require to go to academy is significantly more expensive than the uniform for continuing officers. Ammo is another line that is front-loaded at the beginning of the year. That's already slightly over at 101%. And their equipment line is at 72%. For fire salaries, they're currently at 49%, which doesn't seem concerning of itself, 50% through the year. But their captain line is almost 66% spent. Their lieutenant's line is almost 57% spent, and their overtime's 65% spent. There's a notation here that it's only 49% spent for the entire salary line because there's items that are only paid once a year. So shift and weekend differentials are only paid once a year in January and June. So those lines at the time of this report for December 31st were not expended at all.
Amy, do we have an idea of what those numbers are?
Yes. So each of those lines is about $122,000.
Thank you.
They're identical, so they're both 5% of their base wage.
But tracking budget?
Yes, so those lines are projected to be 100% spent.
Okay. Thank you.
So in the next slide, we're going to go into a more in-depth presentation on the fire and police budget and staffing.
Could I interrupt you one second?
Yes, absolutely.
For our town council and outside council budget, is that because we are hiring more outside counsel, or?
It's a combination of outside special counsel and just increased usage of town council.
And that's because we're doing unique things that require outside counsel that our council cannot do for us?
Yes.
Yes, we have had several needs that are outside of the general purview of KP Law.
And when was the last time we negotiated a rate with KP Law?
Last year?
Oh, you do it annually?
Yep.
Okay.
Are there any other general non-police and fire questions on expenditures? Okay.
I do have one quick question, like
Yes.
on police or fire. If somebody's out sick, do we have like timelines as far as date when somebody's out? Do they end up going out on short-term disability or long-term disability? Are there any things there that?
Yes and no. So yes, we can put someone on FMLA. Yes, there's specific language in each of their collective bargaining agreements for how their respective departments handle it. But ultimately, no, we are not necessarily allowed to just remove someone from employment for an extended absence.
Oh, I don't mean remove them from employment. I just mean if somebody's out on short-term disability, I don't know if that removes them from employment, just gives them a short-term disability funding.
So as long as they have accruals, they continue on payroll.
You're not going to ask Amy the same question as Patrick? Or which department? I'll ask it then. Which department then? You said all these departments are on track to target for end of year, so which ones are you worried about other than fire?
Well,
She has a slide coming up.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
All right,
I
peeked.
didn't look
I
ahead.
peeked, so I know where she was going to.
Please hold. I will wait.
Peter set you up on that one.
I know.
I
Good
did not.
He was like, I didn't ask you on purpose.
story of my life.
So
Ignore me.
this is just a deeper dive into the police and budget. So as of right now, both Swampscott Police and Fire overtime expenditures are trending higher than average and are projected to be over at year end. Steps have been taken to try to mitigate the overages as best as we can by both departments. Next slide. As of right now, the end of year projection for the police department salaries alone is expected to be deficit $192,000, and the fire department salaries alone are projected to be $118,000 over. Next slide. For the fire department, we just want to note, the town, as you know, negotiated the removal of the minimum manning language in the collective bargaining. Effective October 2021, the town was no longer obligated to honor minimum staffing. And effective December 2022, Chief Archer ended the minimum staffing for the fire department and reduced winter staffing to 7 firefighters per shift, as is allowable in the collective bargaining language that was just approved at town meeting. On the next slide.
Can I just ask a question? I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yes.
I'm just trying to, I didn't see this as a detailed discussion on our agenda tonight. I know we were doing budget stuff. I understood that perhaps we were having a chief or two joining us sometime soon to actually talk about these things, but I don't see a chief or two with us tonight. So I'm just trying to understand what, I would rather not get into, my intent, I just feel as though it's very hard. I just want to know whether or not we're just listening tonight or what we're doing, because I don't, my understanding is the chiefs were going to be here, or at some point, I don't know when, but I didn't see this on the agenda.
No, they're not here tonight, and this is just a more detailed explanation of some of the drivers for the overtime expenditures for both the police and fire department.
Right, so I feel, I'm just going to say this, I feel because there seems to be a lot of interest in this topic, that not having the police chief, who is the one that we should be ultimately hearing from, I mean, he's a department head, he owns his budget. It's the single biggest budget, on the town side, right? And I'm just using the police chief because we're talking police, but like fire chief, same thing, right? I don't know, I don't really want to ask the finance director about overtime specific things, because it has to do with staffing specific things. It's not just a numeric conversation. It's a substantive. So I just want to know what, and I guess this is maybe to Neil more so than you, which is what you see us doing. I thought that this conversation was happening with a chief and not without.
I think the idea tonight was for Amy to provide an overview of where we are and what she sees as points of concern. And then if we need to have that deep, dig deeper, then we can do that at a subsequent meeting.
Great, thanks.
Well, I would like to see them at a meeting relatively soon, both the chiefs. I would like to have this conversation.
Okay.
We can go through stuff. I just don't,
That's why I asked the questions.
Yeah, I get concerned that it's just hanging out there at times without context, right? And I think that's, can be inappropriate sometimes to do that. I would rather, again, let me be perfectly clear, when it comes to finances, there's multiple people to hear from. When it comes to public safety things, the chiefs are who hard stop, like the chiefs, right? Mm-hmm. I want to hear, and I want to be able to ask them questions and, things of that nature. So it's fine having this, but it feels like we're, explaining something that maybe there's a broader context that we need to at least be able to have an open dialogue about, not necessarily agreement on necessary things, but to be able to explain certain things. And I just feel like putting this out there without a plan right now is not. We understand there's some overtime expense issues. We understand that we've got to deal with them. We understand there's some staffing vacancies. We understand there's some contract issues. We understand those things, right? But I don't know what us knowing these tonight without being able to ask meaningful questions of the substance
If it makes more sense
is my point. Sorry.
Understood. I think, look, we've given a snapshot of the big picture budget. This is kind of a dial into some of the specifics of staffing that have ultimately created significant overages in both departments. The thought was we'd have those discussions tonight, kind of set the table, and then circle back around with the chiefs and talk about how are we going to manage over the next few months the financial responsibilities that we have to manage the budget.
Right. So
there are decisions that both chiefs will have to make over the next few months that will ultimately determine if these problems get worse or better. And the thought was, this gives us a baseline of where we are today, gives us some information about how we got here today, and then we can talk about, what structurally is happening in both of these departments.
Let me just give you an example, right? To say things like as negotiated in the contract, the winter staffing for the fire department is down this, without being able to contextualize the public safety concerns being met, and for us to be able to say, Chief, you did this, what's the standard, does it meet? And presumably he's going to say, yes, it's met, and this is why it's met, right? And this is why we have to do it. For us to see a slide here that talks about the police chief sending out a notice to staff to say certain things. for us to at least hear it, and not just us, but the public, right? It's not just talking to us here, it's being able to have the public, as opposed to having see this and then have it sitting out there for weeks without being responded to me is what I feel is just a miss. We're going to talk about staffing. We previously had, some unfortunate conversations about staffing, frankly, that, there's different theories about staffing and what staffing is causing for overtime, not overtime, what things like that. Well, the chiefs, need to be here, be the ones to talk to us about this. It's not fair to expect you guys to do that, and I frankly don't want you to. So I hear that you're doing that, but you're putting out a rationale for overtime. That's your rationale. It's a financial rationale, and the numbers don't lie. We are over budget, period, right? Mm-hmm. Why and how to solve that is, I don't believe the players are here to have that conversation. Because I think we need the chiefs to do that. Just like if it was DPW, we wouldn't be just slashing and burning DPW. We would say, make sure we're doing it in the right ways, right? Make sure our streets are still going to be plowed, that type of thing. It's just, so that's, again, to you, Neil, that's just my
So do you all want to skip this portion of the conversation and we'll talk about it at a subsequent meeting with the chiefs present rather than go through this? Because it's just more and more detail.
Yeah, I'd be happy to
And then
come
we'll
back
just
at a
talk
future
about the
meeting
budget
to
development for fiscal
go through
24.
I think that makes sense to me.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, this is a lot of detail.
And I think I just want the chiefs to make sure the chiefs have gone through it with you as well. So when the chiefs are sitting here, they know everything. This is just data, right? And so just to make sure the chiefs are fully read and know the data.
Been briefed on everything that is before you, so.
Right, yeah, no, I understand that. But then to have them here for us to say, okay, chiefs, like, why? Tell us why, and to hear about it, and to just explain things that we won't necessarily know ourselves, right? Because there's a lot about
I hear
public
you.
safety we
I
don't.
think it's important for them to speak to these issues. We just thought we'd set the table and then circle back around with them.
So when will this discussion?
At our next
take place?
meeting.
Okay, in a week.
No, we're not meeting next week.
2 weeks.
Yeah.
Sorry, jeez.
David
We're not meeting next week?
every week.
I mean, we don't have a scheduled meeting next week.
No, that's fine, because why did I think we were?
I don't know, everyone keeps saying next week. We never meet.
I'd never.
It's just,
Normally meet.
I
know it happens.
In fairness, I've said it
is
several
first and
times
third.
tonight, and I've clearly made it.
2 weeks, sorry.
All right, 2
Some
weeks.
of you are saying
mean-
next week.
Yes. No, I don't want to meet.
So we might meet
Be
next
perfectly
week.
clear, I do not want to meet. All right, sorry about that.
But yeah, I think, all right, let's move to budget development then. Sorry, Amy.
Not a problem. I'm happy to come back and hang out with you guys as much as you'd like.
Are there other departments other than fire and police that we are worried about going over budget?
No,
substantial way.
no departments right now that were not on that area of concern slide. Police and fire are the two biggest deficits and the only ones that currently include salaries that are a concern.
Okay.
So I just wanted to give a very quick overview on the FY24 budget development. Last slide, Diane. So we are still on track with the budget timeline that was circulated at the beginning of the season. So all of the departments have submitted their scenarios. We asked for 2 scenarios this year, a level funded and a worst case scenario 10% reduction. At this point, we have done the preliminary health insurance update. We have preliminary debt numbers and are working on the other projections to add in. The town administrator and I have met to go over where we are at for FY24 and how much work we have to do to get a level funded budget to present to everyone. Right now, that is about $1.5 million that we have to trim out of the budget to meet the financial policy for FY24. And I'll let Sean talk to it more, but we are on track for the town administrator's budget to be presented on March 1st, and the budget presentation for that.
So look, I've shared this same comment every year over the last few years. Every one of these budgets gets harder and harder. When we first implemented a zero-based budget 5 years ago, we took revenue and expenditures down to really a very tight focus. We weren't going to overestimate revenues. We weren't going to over appropriate funds to build up, reserves. And so this budget has consistently got tighter and tighter. And so the challenges are real. Like when we look at our cost of livings, both for the town and school budget, like we pay those taxes on the town ledger, we pay the healthcare on the town ledger. We just got this afternoon healthcare projection for all the plans that estimates our healthcare budget is going to be up over 5%. So as we try to look at managing within fiscal policy that calls for no more than a 2% plus new growth, it really places pressure on every single line item in this budget. So our financial team is really looking at every one of our budgets. I sat today with Amy and identified a number of budgets that are frankly just up higher than what we can sustain. And so the task before us is to really meet with a number of department heads and try to get these budgets back down to where, we believe that they can be reasonably supported. We're going to go back and look at revenue to make sure that, we're going to adjust revenue in ways that we can reasonably meet. If interest rates are up significantly, and they look like they're going to be up significantly over the next few years, perhaps that's a way for us to address some of the budgetary issues. But there are no easy decisions. We know that we have goals. We know that we have additional needs, both for our seniors, for our health programs that frankly are rising higher than 2%. And so we've got to prioritize some of these responsibilities. That said, over the next few weeks, we'll be meeting and having some very difficult discussions about prioritizing our financial responsibilities.
Can you tell me how the health insurance, how does that play into fact? Are we in a state health insurance pool?
We have the group insurance commission's healthcare offerings. We have a number of plans that are offered by the GIC. And so, like many other municipalities in the Commonwealth, we are subject to unique features of the risk pool that we're in and some of the cost implications for each of those plan designs. And so there's some specific metrics that each of those plans use to adjust their rates based on experience and risk. Amy, I don't know if there's anything more that you want to add.
So as part of the GIC, we specifically have 10 employee and non-Medicare plans, as well as 6 Medicare plans. They're a combination of HMO, PPO, indemnity type of plan. So we have a breadth of offerings. The rates do vary by plan, as anyone who has health insurance knows. And year over year, the rates increase at different increments. So our projection, because we don't get the true rates until right before open enrollment, you especially know that from the Finance Committee, but right now our estimate is based off of the average of the last 3-year increases that we've seen per plan. We project that out based off the enrollment in January 1st, the number of people who are on each plan as an individual or family, the employee and employer share, all the Medicare reimbursement, and we filter all of this down.
And what is the percentage?
Right now it's the rate increase or the line budget? The line budget increase is 5.3% above last year's. So last year we were 6.8 million, and this year we're projected to be at 7.17 million.
Thank you.
And in case you want the metrics, that's covering 774 employees and their families and retirees.
What percentage of that is the schools?
I can get that breakdown for you. I believe right now we are.
And does the town negotiate the percentage? Like,
It's part of the PEC agreement, which is in place for another 1.5 years. Yes.
and when do you start renegotiating that?
That will start getting renegotiated probably in the next 6 months. because we have to have it before it expires. The school is tentatively about 82% of the employees covered.
Did you say 82%? 82% of that dollar?
Yeah.
And
It's
that's
82% of the employees. Is it safe to assume that that correlates to dollars? Like, is it 82% of
Roughly,
the
yeah.
cost?
So
roughly?
on the
80%?
On the plan offerings, we have two plans that are heavily weighted where the most people are on these two plans, and then it trickles off from there.
And so of that, the town picks up 100% of those. of
Yes,
those
the
costs.
town covers all employees on health insurance. We're the sole payer of it.
So didn't they contribute last year a nominal amount to healthcare? I thought.
No, the issue last year was
There was only one.
just one. We had originally tried to reduce the school's appropriation to absorb a portion of the
Gotcha.
increase in health insurance
Okay.
and ended up not doing
So that didn't happen. Okay. And that's not part of the plan this year that they would be contributing to that cost,
Hold
to
on.
the health.
We have to figure out where we're gonna be with, the budget. And I still need to work with the superintendent. We have a lot of important conversations that we have to have about, how to just
Deal with
balance
this.
this year's budget.
Sure. Yeah, I'm just trying to remember what we did last year.
And then for another, an actual known line item, we do already have our pension number for this year, and it's a 5.9% increase above last year's.
So when will you start conversations with the retirement board about the different opportunities there?
The retirement board is actually planning on speaking with the select board in April about funding schedule and other items.
You have that, Neil?
Yep.
This is a revaluation year for the retirement board, so the revaluation numbers will come out in April, which obviously the board does. I'm an ex officio, full disclosure, on the retirement board.
Right.
So once we get the revaluation, the board will be coming to the select board to discuss a number of items, but one of them will include the updated funding schedule number, so we'll have the true impact. None of the discussion that the retirement board is having has an impact on the FY24 appropriation.
I think it's important to kind of just appreciate that with rising interest rates, the retirement performance has been well above what we had anticipated. And so there's some good news in terms of, the interest rates and their ability to generate revenue to help offset the unfunded obligations.
I'm just wondering if the conversation is going to be coming, if the conversation is coming late in April, is that a little too late for you working these numbers?
Maybe, I've had a few conversations about trying to, extend the schedule and reduce the impact to the operating budget. I feel as though it is incredibly painful for a town of our size to have to deal with such a large increase, such a large line item in our budget. This generation of taxpayers is unfairly burdened by an obligation that frankly should be stretched across a much broader horizon.
That's why I'm thinking, should that conversation begin earlier than April,
I do believe it should, and frankly, I'll work
like
with
February?
our finance team to see if we can advance that schedule.
So but to be clear, that those conversations can affect fiscal year '24 performance, fund performance, other conversations can't. I just want to understand what can affect '24 and what can't affect '24.
So the retirement board will be coming to the select board to discuss the local option acceptance of an additional 2% on the COLA. And
Okay, so that, while they're here talking about that, what else can we do that impacts '24, is my question. Is there something else they can come to us on? Is there anything else that we can do with the retirement board to potentially reduce our liability in '24, is maybe more blunt.
Yes, so conversations can be had with the retirement board about extending the funding schedule or any of those other metrics. It's just until they get the valuation numbers in April,
Yep.
there's no true dollar amount that we can put on it because we'd be working off a two-year-old
That's right.
valuation.
That evaluation doesn't come in until April.
I got it.
That's why it's,
Yep.
that's
Alright.
why it's April.
Yes.
Okay.
Great.
Oh, however, is there a possibility that, do you or you and the entire retirement board, are you able to foresee what those numbers could be? Like, do you have a gut feeling what they could be? And then could you make a number of scenarios, like 4 scenarios? If it comes in here, we're thinking about doing this, comes in here, we're thinking about.
So we have requested a number of scenarios from our actuary at Siegel.
Right.
To play out some different models. As of right now, the actuary has basically just given us a general update that the market performance in '21 was amazing and the market performance in '22 was not, and that we may not be super thrilled with the net number. The retirement board did have a contingency that was not included in the funding schedule, so the prospect could just be that that contingency is reduced and that there isn't much of an impact to the funding schedule.
Okay.
I have personally asked the actuary to try to keep the year-over-year funding as close as they can to 2 to 3% to stay within our financial policy, and we'll see how that comes out.
Okay.
Hey, but good news, we got $2,000 extra in boat revenue this year.
Yeah, the boats.
Let's go back to that boat excise tax, can we?
We're actually looking at other
Patrick was far more
communities
positive.
in the fees.
Patrick, tell us more about boats.
The investment income.
I was going to say,
yeah,
investment
that's
income
awesome.
will actually make you
Look at that
happy.
number again.
We're looking at
$9
mooring
billion
fees
more
and,
positive than this.
you know, all sorts of additional recommendations to increase those revenue items. We offer among the most affordable mooring fees out of any community in Massachusetts. And so
I wasn't really trying to talk about the boats. This is humor. We can move on.
it's all numbers to me.
I agree with you, but I really wasn't.
So-
I don't want anybody to think I was trying to.
I forwarded an email. I forwarded an email to all of you from the chair of the school committee. They're having a public hearing on their budget tomorrow night, so I recommend, they had invited us to watch, and I think that we should all pay attention to that conversation, whether you can watch it live or watch the recording, and you probably all were planning on it anyways, but I just want to emphasize that's happening tomorrow night. Anything else? So the budget will be on our agenda probably most meetings between now and town meeting, but certainly at our next meeting, which is not next week. Right, Diane? I hope not. Yeah. Okay. Anything else on that?
Thank you, Amy and Patrick.
Thanks, Amy. Thanks, Patrick. So let's move on to discussion of select board and town administrator goals. We all have a draft of the goals that we discussed, I think at our last meeting. Our goals as well as the town administrator's goals. I'm not sure if anyone has any further comment on the select board goals or their own individual goals related to the list that we have in our packet, but we can start there, but if not, we can move on to the town administrator's goals.
I have an additional goal.
Okay.
I spoke to the town administrator about the DE&I consultants and fostering a larger conversation about DE&I in town and at town hall and in all town employment. Some training and some understanding about diversity, equity, and inclusion. So now that I've had that conversation, I would like to add it as a goal.
Great.
Really appreciate that. Katie, I think, over the last few years, it's clear, we all need continuing education with this. There's always ways for us to be more open to, awareness of where, we can communicate more effectively, where we can be more sensitive to things that frankly are just, difficult for others. I have personally found it, to be eye-opening to just recognize a few challenges that I face, but certainly very much want to see that become more of a institutional value. We've got lots of work to do, and I think as Peter had mentioned earlier, we had some great dialogues a few years ago around this. We need to get back to having a few more of those, and having that as a goal, I think, would be very helpful.
Yeah, I think there was talk, a couple of years ago about having like a DEI committee or equity committee or something, and I think we committed to a position, but we haven't filled that position. Now we have a consultant, and we haven't done that. And I think that, I can say in my experience, like the agency I work for created an equity working group that I was part of, and I think that, for the first like 6 to 8 months, we just talked about like what we should do and talked about like what our goals were and just trying to figure it out. But eventually, by forming those groups, you get people to start having those conversations, and when you start having those conversations, eventually someone just says like, let's try something, and you sort of you're not afraid to try something anymore. I think this is more along the lines of community-focused stuff probably, but could also be in terms of town hall. I do think town hall, like consultant and, sort of an audit feels like it makes more sense, but I totally support that goal and think that we have to get things moving.
Yeah, and when I was speaking to Sean about it, I think just the idea of it starting somewhere and flourishing into other things like boards and committees and ourselves, and what it means to really foster these philosophies and really putting our money where our mouth is and doing the work. And not just saying that we hope we are these things, but actually doing the work to show we are these things. It's really important that we do that, and that's not just at Town Hall, that's even with our own boards and committees. We could all be doing better, so let's try to do that. It's a lofty goal, but
great.
Maybe we can accomplish a small piece of it, and that will be something.
Yep. Anything else from anyone else on board goals? All right, town administrator goals. We have a long list from Sean. I think we wanted to hopefully maybe focus and give him a sense of where to focus on. Maybe we can think about moving things around or consolidating or even eliminating some of these, not that any of them are unimportant, but also, I know at our last meeting we talked about sort of timeline and when we would be revisiting these and evaluating these given the time of where we are in the process. We had, in terms of the timing of a formal evaluation, we completed Sean's evaluation in the fall. That was for up until through the previous fiscal year, so we're essentially like the clock starts technically in July for these goals. Happy to take comments, or if we can go through them one by one, or if people have overall comments on anything where they think is less important or more important, we can start there.
Like, for me, I just think the improved communications and community engagement is something that's incredibly important. It's incredibly important to me. It's incredibly important to residents that I talk to. And really just having that calendar of events where everything is being captured and shared on, on the town website. The town website could be such an incredible resource. It's much better than it was. One of the first things that Neil and I did in 2020 was get together and improve communications and really work to focus on getting a website that actually worked. But we need to continue that and
Totally agree.
continue to have that focus and really to capture all of the incredible things that are happening in the community and all the incredible activities and events that our committees and boards are doing. We're certainly capturing, the select board and the planning board and the zoning board, but we're not always capturing those.
Totally hear you. Katie had mentioned this last week when we met. It's like, this should be a one-stop, place. If you want to see activities going on in Swampscott, you should be able to go to the town website and say, hey, look, here's both the civic and recreation and cultural and, non-profit. Like, there should be a real robust calendar. I've talked to our team about that, and I think we can reach out. We've done a good job with our newsletter. I think we can continue to expand some of these efforts. At the MMA convention, I did attend one of the workshops on improving communications, and it was interesting. We use the same module, the same company, for the website that won the Best Website Award. A few tweaks, and I think not only do we have, a very good website, but it can get that much better. I do think that calendar option is really probably the most in need, and we're going to have to work with a couple of different groups to just get that information and get it updated regularly.
So are department heads already sending you updates for your town administrator report?
They do. I usually get every week a few bullets or a few updates. Generally, I have department head meetings every 2 weeks, so I get information in those meetings as well. But they're not regularly updating a calendar of activities. And so I think that's where, we're losing a little bit of that engagement, and I think we've got to take that to that next level.
Mm-hmm. And how can we be of assistance too here for with the committees that we're
I think,
liaising?
if you can help synergize and help identify what monthly or weekly programs belong on that website. If you want to send some information along, I think we can all just kind of keep a very robust engagement that helps that calendar really reflect all of the busy things that folks should be aware of.
I want you to know that I get more comments about our website than probably anything else in town, and they're not positive comments. So I'm not sure if the award-winning.
It's potential, he's saying, the award-winning potential.
That's great, that's award-winning potential.
I think the big
The only thing
problem-
I'll say is I guarantee you the award-winning website at the MMA conference, I can't remember what town it was.
Reading.
I guarantee you Reading residents complain about their website.
Really?
Sure, but if
But
you
they have
Guarantee
do
it.
these
I know we
side
can
by
do
side,
that. I
They
know
have
we can
more
do
pictures
better.
that
Reading's
flash
website,
across the
they
screen,
pale in,
and they have a
pale
few
in
more video.
comparison.
I know, I'm not saying we can't do better. I'm just saying,
You don't want to say that. Yeah.
I like, for example, this weekend, it is supposed to be very cold. If a family wants to find something to do this weekend inside, there must be things going on, but there's nowhere to go find them. I have to sift through Facebook posts and newsletters and all sorts of things, and quite frankly, I don't have time to do that. So I will go somewhere else outside of town to do something that I'm gonna pay for. So instead, there could be a place where I could go and say, I have 4 hours, what can I do? here it is.
So I went on the website tonight, and we have our select board meeting. We don't have events at the library. We don't have, other events that,
Right.
So
You
if
know-
we just take a look, I want to just circumvent, if everybody takes a look at the Reading page, and if it's the same platform, and we get the benefits of doing that, I think you're all going to be pleased over what we have today. I mean, because the Reading page is better. I'm not gonna comment on how much better. It is better. I mean, Sean, it's just not, for someone who's not familiar with town government, and that's the lens it has to be viewed in. I want to go there and I want to find, I heard something about Elm Place. I don't know, like as a resident, I don't know community development. Like I have to look at the department and say, which one sounds like the department
Right.
that matters to
Can't
me?
you put in Elm Place in search?
You can, but then it picks up every select
Yeah,
board
it picks
meeting,
up everything that where Elm
every
Place is
minutes,
referred, so I mean, it's a very generic
Okay.
search that grabs everything, but just things like that, like we are used to the vernacular, and so people that are used to the vernacular should not be the ones modeling the website, because of things like that. People just don't know to go to community development for things, or if we're looking for the bylaws, right? You don't necessarily know to go to the clerk's office, right? Unless you know why would the clerk have the bylaws, right? And so I think there's just a lot of that stuff. And again, we've made progress in recent years, to be clear, but we're still, this has to be a living,
I hear you.
living, breathing thing, because it just,
I came back with Reading's website, and I started looking at ours, and I was clear that we can make it better, but I do think that's a goal that we can make some progress on over the next few months. I do have a great team. I have some folks that are really working hard to, help make that newsletter that much better, and I think we can use that as part of the connective tissue to the calendar that says, hey, look, we have so many groups that are doing so many great things, so many committees that are doing so many great things. Let's just connect it all together. Let's make that calendar really reflect the very busy type of community that we are.
So for me, on these goals, the number one is continue improvements of town finances. And I would like to see that really blown up long-term, what it's gonna look like 10 years, what capital is gonna look like over the next 20 years, what the forecast is for taxes coming in, the whole kit and caboodle, so that everybody has a real understanding. Because as Peter Spelios said a couple meetings ago, this is one thing that keeps him up at night. That's what you said, right, Peter?
I did.
And I do think that this is one of your strengths, and I think that we should really, really get into this super deep and see what's going on and make sure people can get educated.
Yeah, I think it's probably, I think we've made it look easy over the last few years, and I think it's going to become incredibly challenging.
Yep.
We are all going to have to work closely together to stay the course. I think we've all really gotten a strong sense of what happens when we have that esprit de corps, where we can actually strike that balance between our ability to, afford, core services and really keep, town finances in a very prudent fashion. We can do more by being more careful, but it becomes very, very difficult because we have a lot of special interests, and we have a lot of folks that frankly...
We have a lot of responsibility, right? I mean, I don't want to call it special interest. We have a lot of responsibility as a town. Like, everybody thinks they're a special interest, but we're a town. We have to spend money to do things and striking that balance, right? And the school thing's a perfect example. Like, look at the school's not wrong. The funding system for schools is absolutely broken. Period. Hard stop. Like, there isn't a community that can balance their budget with what's happening in schools, what's happening with assessments for vocational schools and charter schools and special education. There is not a town that can meet that need. Zero. But yet we're all charged with it, right? So I just want to echo what Mary Ellen's saying on that. That is just, and you are the skunk at the party consistently because of that. And I know that's difficult, and you are the one that, and your team are the ones that get beaten up over it. And I'm grateful for that, and we need to help you, but that is so critical.
I think that would help with a wider range of communication, so people really understand. So I've received several phone calls about the school budget, which I haven't even seen. I'm not on the school committee. But I think many people don't understand really what is our entire town, what is our town? Is it just a town with the school, or do we also have other obligations? We have fire, we have police, we have DPW, we have our senior population is growing quicker than other communities. We have more than 30% of our population is over 55, and there's a lot of issues around that. So I just think we've got to just get it out there, get the whole story out there, and people need to have a better understanding of what finances mean.
Very much understand. Appreciate all of it.
So is there anything, in that goal, I mean, you had mentioned, like you said, the whole kit and caboodle, having like longer forecasts, and we're talking about, there's sort of short-term, long-term, right? Like we have big picture, like of course, continuing improvement of town finances, like that's always a goal, right? Like that's a big picture, high-level goal that will always be there. But in terms of like from now until next fall, is there something aside from, what we're seeing here that feels like a reasonable thing to think about? And you don't have to answer this now, but just thinking about like, is there a goal or an action to be taken that you think that maybe we aren't doing, that we could start doing, that could then be revisited 6 months, 12 months down the line?
You know what, let me think about it. I'll just tweak that. I mean, some of the big issues I have are, how are we going to be handling some of our goals of Hadley, Hawthorne, our infrastructure, our water and our sewers? How does that all play into our financial burden long-term? So as far as what can be done in the next 6 months, I'll think about that. It pretty much has to do with just articulating what the situation looks like.
I think that capital plan, if I had to kind of just put a specific goal, we can develop a stronger capital plan. And I think that capital plan can be more illustrative and more tied to, really that long-term financial plan that we're hoping to achieve.
Okay.
So I think for me, first of all, I think as your list, you have 8 subheadings. I'm just going to read them because people at home aren't seeing them, but TA professional development, improved communications and community engagement, ongoing investments in public facilities and town properties, support and promote affordable housing development, continued improvement on town finances, strengthen human resources and staff support, advance climate resiliency efforts, support public health and mental health programming, and then other projects. I think that your goals reflect you hearing a lot of things that we've been talking about, and and so I really appreciate the fact that I think there's commonality. I mean, I think you've categorized it, and then you have details under each of more specific things. I think what I would like just to set the expectation is, when it comes to the end of the year, when we are saying, how did we do on these goals, that you're able to take each one of these topics and your subsets and say, so what did you achieve on those things? And the truth is, with 26 different things that are categories that could have a million things, there's going to be categories you're going to say, I didn't get to it this year, right? I mean, and that's okay. What I don't want you to do is spread yourself so thin that, because you're like, I just need to look complete. Check the box. As opposed to just, but I want to set the expectation is the kind of the self-evaluation is kind of this document blown out to say, oh, great, now what did I do under number 1? I did these 4 things. On number 2, I said I was going to try and attend 6 MMA meetings. I attended 5, right? And it's not really for us. It's a measure for you also to allow you to keep tracking and go back month to month to these things and say, how am I doing? And recognize, and I think we have to recognize as well something. Hey, we just didn't get to this, either because of their extenuating circumstances or just time, right? Something took more time and squeezed something out. But I think this is a great roadmap to keep coming back to and having sitting, on your board and using these. And I really appreciate your effort in creating this, because this is the most robust one I've seen from you, which is, I think, a real reflection of you being tuned in, and I really appreciate that.
Thank you, Peter. I appreciate the sense that, look, 26, 27, if we have the DEI, which I plan to update. That's, no, look, that's not a small list for anybody. I sit with my department heads, and I typically give them, no more than 5 or 6. Many of them have 3 or 4. It's hard, to balance, the specific responsibilities that we have. But, we have so many busy projects that are currently in the queue. Frankly, I look forward to kind of putting all these up and just looking at it every day when I come to work and saying, where are we with all of these key priorities? There's so many that will not advance if we don't have, a concerted focus. Affordable housing is one of them. If that is not my goal that I think about every single day, it's going to be hard for us to maintain, a strong focus on that. It just hasn't been one of the town's broader goals, but we're all doing that now, and to me, I just want to continue to see that advance. I want to be as helpful as I can to the board as you advance your goals as well. To me, it just feels like Swampscott is as busy today as it has been since I've started. Perhaps, when you look around, this might be a busy time historically.
Any other comments? Would you all like to approve these as goals for, I think that in terms of how this works with the evaluation, I think the evaluation should happen in the fall, personally. And I think that because of when we did the evaluation this year, it may make sense. Otherwise, we're talking about May. It's just fair, to be fair, like to get to have time to pursue these goals.
Yep.
That's what makes more sense to me. But I'm open to hearing what you all think about the timeline, and then also if we want to approve these as it were tonight, and of course we can revisit things.
I know Mary Ellen and I have both said it, that the timeline of the evaluation is not conducive to new members coming to the board.
Right.
We evaluated Sean based on 60
6
days. 6 weeks.
Right, and Sean actually, he expressed to me he had a problem with that. You said you felt that we should have evaluated you based on the whole year, but that's not the message that was delivered to us, and that
Well,
really
I gave you a
wouldn't be
memo and I
fair.
gave you information, but I certainly understand those concerns.
Yeah, I just feel like.
I want it to be fair to,
Right.
fair to people achieving their goals. Just the question is, I don't recall what your contract actually says, so I'm good with administrative goals, and I'm good with changing the dates. It's just, I just want to make sure that contractually we're doing
Yeah, I
what's in
think
there.
my contract.
checking it now.
will Review in October.
I think it's October.
Yeah, so there's a disconnect in the contract between bonus payment timing and when we have to encumber funds in fiscal
Right.
years and when the review is done. So we just we can figure that out. Like, that's something we can reconcile. We just need to do it.
Timeline.
Yeah, so maybe, Sean, if you take a look and maybe make a suggestion, assuming the October review, how we deal with it. It's just 1 year, that's going to be more
Right.
the awkward thing. But how you want to do, how you suggest dealing with that? And then, as long as you're open to that, that will just switch by a couple of months payments.
Yep.
But I just want to make sure we're also not screwing with the fiscal year calendars for financial reasons.
Understood. Happy to take a look at it.
Yeah, I think if the change in timing happens, then we have to make a concession that the amount of, the expectation has to be adjusted based on the timing of the evaluation. So as long as everybody's comfortable with that, then I think the timing is important, and it only allows for a better understanding of whether the goals are met from people who lived the goals instead of from people who are just jumping in.
Yeah, well, it gives 5 or 6 months to, rather than 5 or 6 weeks.
Right.
Yes.
So that's a great idea, Neil.
Okay. I also may have a conversation with PKN about the actual evaluation form, but I don't know how, given that that's what we've used. I mean, it's the only one that I've done 2 of these, but seems robust. And maybe there's a way to do it, to streamline it a little bit and still get what we want out of it. So I'll talk to Peter.
I thought it was pretty good,
Okay.
but only judge.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just
Yeah.
saying
Could be
perhaps
better.
we could streamline it a little bit.
Do-
So,
Is there not some sort of technology we could be leveraging that Town Hall already uses that we could, like, when you do evaluations for your heads of department, do you do them all paper forms?
I do, they're, typically in a Excel spreadsheet, but they update those and, some will actually write in them, but
So there's no like Workday or any other function you can leverage that you're already using in Town Hall that would help you facilitate reviews and in turn?
yeah,
allow us
I've
to
looked,
facilitate
Munis has a valuation form, and I think we can look at that. It is not as easily to be, edited and changed.
Okay.
I think we have a little bit more operability with a simple spreadsheet that is pretty detailed.
Okay.
Always looking though, always, we talked about, I met with our Assistant Town Administrator, HR Director today, to talk about, some electronic tablets and things that would help us, reduce the reliance on paper and be more efficient. So there's always opportunities for us to be looking at technology to be more efficient.
Great, thank you.
so are we good with the goals?
Do we have to vote on them?
I don't think we have to.
I just sort of feel like here they are memorialized and
Yeah.
That's fine with me. I just,
we're.
in terms of like having this conversation again, I think we're good for now.
Good. We
Leave
all
it at
feel
that.
old.
Can we vote on if we're good for now?
Yes,
Yeah.
agreed.
All right, good.
Second.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you.
All right, next is the consent agenda. On the consent agenda tonight, we have previous meeting minutes and entertainment license for Cookie Monster. Any questions?
No, but has anybody ever read the application?
Yes,
I love
yes,
your
I laughed.
So I read it, but just rest assured, you're not going to see exposed people at the Cookie Monster when you get your
Right.
cookies.
I hope not. I hope
I hope
not.
not.
That's what they wrote.
So I don't think I've ever noticed that section before. All right.
A motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second? Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, Sean's town administrator report.
Thank you, Neil. We continue to, we've had several meetings over this past week with Attorney Sims, just to follow up on the discussions regarding aggregate. My hope is that we'll have a meeting next week with members of the Select Board and ERAC, just the focus group. Let's see, our 2023 trash and recycling guide is complete and will be mailed out with the census. The guide can be found on the town website under How Do I tab. We are working out some of the hazardous waste schedules. We've had some disruption in the hazardous waste market. We're seeing significant costs escalating, just given the challenge with solid waste. So we're trying to get a more regularly scheduled hazardous waste program. certainly, have ongoing discussions with our budgets. As we mentioned earlier, we are trending high in some budgets, but I have worked with our finance team, and we do have a path to ending the fiscal year in the black. The town does have some focus on other line items in the budget that can help us address some of the overages, but certainly, I just want to highlight that as we get through the midpoint in the year as something that is going to really be a pressing responsibility over the next few months. Really want to thank everybody that came out and supported the idea exchange that we had at the Hawthorne. I thought it was just a community building event. I know that we have a lot of folks that are very interested and excited to see what the short-term and long-term uses of the Hawthorne property will be, but this is really an exciting time for Swampscott, and I want to encourage folks to contribute to ideas. You can go onto our website and really share some of your thoughts about what those uses should be. Especially want to thank Anthony Athanas and the staff at the Hawthorne. I think it's really wonderful that we were able to partner. I hope that there may be a few other programs over the next few months over at the Hawthorne that can help us celebrate that location and continue to engage citizens in that development process. I want to thank Rabbi Michael Rogozin of Congregate Sharet Hayrim and Rabbi Lipsker for their work in Swampscott at our recent No Place for Hate rally. I had a wonderful lunch last week with Rabbi Rogozin, and we talked a lot about some of the strategies that we hope to employ that would help our youth and our broader community address some of the division, some of the hate that is out there. It's our young adults that oftentimes are involved in some of the hate crimes, and we want to make sure that we're really reaching out to them and helping them understand just the importance of community. Just remember to return your census as soon as possible, along with dog license application and any fees if applicable. We had our first meeting of the Climate Action Committee last week, and we are looking forward to have an update at our annual town meeting in May. We are moving forward with the conservation restrictions for the newly purchased Archer Street properties. We are going to look at scheduling a department head meeting and walk through. Want to encourage board members, if you haven't been up there, to walk through it. It's a absolutely gorgeous piece of property. You can see all the way out to Boston. Wonderful place. You should get out there before the poison ivy starts to grow. A lot of recreation programs are already out on our website for this summer, so please take a look. We have, moving forward with both our police and fire rolling exams, and I've had a number of discussions with both Chief Casada and Chief Archer about our contract with Lynn for dispatching. Our library is in the process of creating a new website. It should be up and running later in the spring, and certainly we're looking at ways to collaborate more closely with the library. We have been busy with our HR department, hiring vacancies at a very diligent rate. We still are looking for a new part-time assessor. The Board of Assessors is meeting with a number of candidates to go over their screening responsibilities under the charter. We're still looking for a new assistant director of planning. The job description is up on the town website. There was a forum on Monday at the high school to discuss accessory dwelling units. This is a small way to help advance additional affordable housing in Swampscott, but there are concerns about how this might affect our neighborhoods, and certainly want to make sure that the board is apprised of that. We have some important information on it, so happy to follow up with the board if you want to hear more about the assisted dwelling units. That's my report.
I have one quick question. Did we talk about the possibility of hiring a planning consultant to come in to help while we're in the
We did.
process? And where are we with that?
We have a few individuals that have reached out to me that are interested in providing some planning consultant. I've worked with Marzi and Peter, but we're also interviewing a few candidates at the same time. So both of those conversations are ongoing.
You're interviewing candidates for the planning, for the director?
We are.
For the senior planner role?
For the assistant director of planning?
Assistant director.
Assistant
For the assistant director of planning?
We've upgraded the job description.
Upgraded the description.
Got it.
Salary range.
Wait, just, there's one position open, right? For
Correct.
planning? Okay. And you have candidates that are interviewing for that position right now? And do you have an ETA of?
I don't.
So you don't know. If
I
you're
don't.
just interviewing, you don't even feel like them.
But I understand that it's critical that we fill that, and I'm open to both options, and we're really eager to get some assistance in that function.
So do you think that within, what kind of time frame do you think that you'd bring in at least a consultant just to help out there?
It's my hope that we'll have somebody in within the next 6 weeks, but, could be sooner. But I just want to be.
Sean, do you have an idea of, I thought the idea exchange was incredible over the weekend. Do we have an idea and a timeline of next steps at the Hawthorne? And additionally, do we have an idea of next steps for what's going to happen at Hadley?
So, we're going to debrief with the HDR team early next week and talk about those next steps. We have some data that we collected already from individuals that attended and folks that have shared some information online that we hope to disseminate. We're going to talk about timing and go over a schedule of additional community engagement activities. So I expect sometime next week we'll get that information out. We've had a lot of folks that are really eager to hear about another event. We haven't talked about the Hadley, but that's something that I can circle back around with town staff and talk about, what our next steps are. We've talked about issuing potentially an RFI or an RFP, just to talk about, how do we really generate some interest in getting some development for the property, but certainly want to work with the board and sequence that in a way that makes sense for the town.
I thought an RFI went out, didn't RFI go out a while ago?
No, on Hadley, all we had was the reuse committee met and interviewed different people. And you might be thinking about Michonne. We did an RFI, RFP process.
No, I'm
Michonne.
thinking of Hadley.
No, Hadley, we never did an RFI. What we did is there were certain subject matter subgroups of the Hadley Reuse Committee, and they went out, for example, if it was culture, they went out and talked to potential affinity groups or groups that would be interested. The hospitality one talked to potential hotel users to do that, but there was never an RFI.
So I'd really like to see this, I'd like to see this on the agenda fairly soon rather than later, because some of the concerns I have, I'm not comfortable talking about Hawthorne and Hadley like they're in a vacuum. I just think that this has to be some type of a big conversation, big conversation.
I appreciate that, Mary Ellen. I think you're right. I think, both of these properties are synergistic, and I think we have to think about one is going to be used to really appreciate how best to define the other.
Right.
So if I could stay on this topic for a second. So I appreciate David raising it. I think and we should have it on probably our next meeting just to get in a bit more detailed conversation. I'm happy to prepare some things to kind of help with the timelines here. Hadley we are 16 months from Hadley being empty, right? And so from my standpoint, that should be a paramount focus, because an empty school is a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
We have to set it on a course because it's going to take a period of time just to get it on its course. Like once you say this is what it's going to be, then it takes a period of time for that to happen, right? Hawthorne is a really important decision, but to me, the one that's giving me a bit more angst at the moment is if Hawthorne leaves October 31st of this year, we now have an empty building at Hawthorne.
Right.
And so I really appreciate that in the idea exchange part was included the temporary reuse of the property to what's the interim use of the property, because vacant can't be an interim use, right? And so I think that we really need to, so I say that because I really think as though we need to get an update from HDR. They did a nice job on Saturday. I think we have a debriefing coming up sometime we're trying to schedule or something, but that's great, but I really want to make sure that we're prioritizing the temporary, because that is a big decision in and of itself, and it's going to require us to go to town meeting to get approvals, because if you remember, we specifically limited our ability to use that property for any use through just this year. So at the end of this year, we basically, there's no use that can be done there without us going back to town meeting, so we have to go back to town meeting to kind of get their blessing on this, and it would be a shame to save that for a November special town meeting, because that means that we won't have gone to the market, we won't have done anything, and the building's going to sit empty for a long period of time.
Right.
So to me, that
We
is
need to
a
start talking.
that is a May time period for us to make a decision as a board as to what it is. So I think we need to very quickly and with some precision, and maybe with, and not maybe, but I think probably asking for some help from the community to establish a working group or something to help us with that, because that is something that I didn't partake in that group that was doing the temporary. I walked around and talked to people, but I didn't. So I haven't even seen what some of the ideas were. But I think very quickly we need to that needs to be made a priority for HDR to at least synthesize that information for us, so that we then can run with it. Right? We don't need them necessarily to run with that. But I am concerned about that, because that building will sit vacant. That is not a good thing, and that should bother us. On Hadley, I think that we're going to, my opinion is, and we'll talk more, we can talk in another meeting, is, look, we're going to have to make some high-level decisions of what we want to recommend to town meeting in terms of a kind of course of action here, right? I mean, I'm just going to put it in 3 buckets: no revenue, and a fusion, right? And I'm doing that very simply just to be able to articulate. Then you look at Hadley and say, well, if this is no revenue, can this be no revenue? Can everything be no revenue? No, yes, who knows what the conversation is. So I'm even just starting with big buckets. I'm not even getting into the idea of what it is, right? As opposed to just trying to figure out where our heads are and where staff's head are, because that will start narrowing down some conversations for us. And we have to, because the Hadley is going to take a while, like meaning to do an RFP, figure out the final idea, do the RFP, vet it, and then have them execute on an RFP, meaning execute their project in the Hadley. That building's going to be in construction for potentially a year, 2 years, 3 years, so.
What's the process of sending out an RFI? I don't know why I thought an RFI was supposed to be going out.
We can approve an RFI, the second one's in front of us, right? But an RFI just says, hey, world, tell us your interest.
Right.
There's different views about RFIs, and there's some communities that do RFQs instead, which is, this is generally our idea, tell us why you're qualified to do our idea, so it's a little bit different than an RFI. There are many that don't respond to RFIs in the public sector versus the private sector, because in the public sector, the RFI is public. So there's a lot of schools of thought there, that you educate the world about your idea, which means when the RFP happens, they can take elements of what you're doing and make it their idea, which is, again, it's fair because it's a public process, right? So RFIs don't necessarily give you the broadest swath, if you will, of potentially interested parties, because there are people that stay back and say, I'm not going to, this is not binding, it's just giving you guys information, town. I'm not going to give you my proposal yet as to what I want to do. So I'm just saying that I don't know.
I think a challenge with RFI is you issue an RFI and you may not get responses, but that may not be an indication that there are no ideas.
Better said, yes. Exactly right. And I think we have, we should have a meeting where we're pulling back out that reuse committee
Yeah.
report and really focusing on, because they did a really good job. Like, they categorized it down into 3 very distinct categories. And I think, even for us to express a preference as to where we think it should go, then helps focus it. It's very hard when we're still taking that same report and not narrowing it down. I really think we should always be working to keep taking it and narrowing. At some point, it's our responsibility to take an opinion, bring it to town meeting, and town meeting ultimately gets to make a decision, right? But my concern would be, I don't want to keep taking this and not narrowing things down. So maybe we can have a meeting, not next week, but whenever we have a meeting.
We might need one.
But and maybe before not too much longer happens, only because we are going to get into all the budget stuff. But we got to talk Hadley, and then we got to talk Hawthorne temporary reuse. Those are just,
That's gotta be
sorry,
a priority.
I'm rambling on a little bit here, but those are the things. Empty buildings
Uh-huh.
scare me.
Do you think that it is us having that conversation about Hadley reuse without the committee reflecting on their report now that the Hawthorne has been acquired? You're not thinking about going back to the committee and saying, now that we've acquired Hawthorne, do you still feel these are the three best uses?
Well, they don't know what we're doing for the Hawthorns. I mean, we can certainly do that, but since we don't know what we're doing for the Hawthorne, it would require them to subjectively decide themselves what they think we're going to do with the Hawthorne, because how otherwise can they change their idea? I'm happy for everybody to chime in. No,
Something's happening with it.
it is, right?
So, I don't know. I guess that's my thought about this whole conversation of having these ideas in a vacuum and not being able to definitively say, like, I would like to see this happen at Hadley because these things are happening at Hawthorne, or vice versa, and then to be at a disservice because you chose to work off a committee report which did not contemplate Hawthorne, and now you're in these three ideas, and that might not synergize with what.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to do it, but I also don't want to have the committee take 6 months to do that because, well, and again.
No, I'm just saying, well.
No, I'm just saying, my concern is, and you're raising a really good point, like, they didn't even know that possibility was there, right?
Correct.
I'm just trying to work backwards on calendars, to be honest with you, at the moment, because I just,
Don't want to see a building vacant.
we're gonna have empty buildings.
Yeah.
And I do worry, and it's a lot of bandwidth and bandwidth that we've got to use to do this. And so I don't know how to even, in thinking about it, I wouldn't even know how to say to the reuse committee, besides saying, here's all the ideas that came in the idea exchange for the Hawthorne. Does that change your opinions at all here? And I think what they'll say is, if this, then that, maybe, but, and I agree, we shouldn't be thinking them totally independent from each other, but I think at some point we have to, that's why I was taking us a little bit higher in macro conversations and saying, maybe if we just start revenue, non-revenue in a way. And I'm not saying that's the best idea, I'm just giving an example so that we don't get caught up. Like if this board, for example, says, just a conversation, can we afford for the Hawthorne and the Hadley to not be revenue generating properties? And if the board says, yes, we can, or the board says, no, we can't, that at least we've started to shape a dialogue that then gives us something to go to the Hadley Reuse Committee on, for example, and say, hey, as you're thinking about this, you can't think of both as non-revenue generating spaces. We are thinking one, who knows which one, or whatever it is, or whatever, and I'm using revenue, and revenue is not the only consideration. There's other altruistic goals that the town may decide it wants to do. I'm just picking something that allows us to see where we are, where our heads are today, because we still have a lot of listening to do before we make a final decision on anything and present something at town meeting, but it doesn't mean that we don't already have a sense of some things, and let's see where we are. Let's, because that would make Hadley Reuse at least give them some guardrail to be able to say, if you're assuming this to be open space or to be civic space, then you probably should assume some revenue on Hawthorne. Or if that's where we want them to think.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? I mean, I'm
I think that makes
spitballing
sense.
it just because I'm trying to provoke the
Because
dialogue.
They did all the legwork, right? And they did all the work before we acquired Hawthorne, and I think we owe it to them to go back and say, okay, if this is this sort of the three veins that we're looking at, revenue, non-revenue, hybrid, do you feel like your ideas are still valid?
All right, so why don't we do this? It's a really good point. Why don't you and I were liaisons, right?
What?
You and I were the liaisons?
Yeah.
Why don't we go back and maybe work on a communication to send to the committee, to at least individually at this moment and say, hey, look, and maybe set up a meeting sometime in the next couple of weeks and and just say, this is the question we want to talk to you about, and just pose the question now so that they come to the meeting in 2 weeks having thought about it.
Because we're going to be thinking about it when we're making.
No, it's
I
great.
just don't want to put them.
Yeah, it's a
back.
great. It's a really fair, good point.
And every resident that I talked to at the Hawthorne Idea Exchange was asking us what the plan was for Hadley. So
Right.
I think these are inextricably connected.
Yeah, I mean, one of the main feedback I heard was about parking, and then they're like, well, will there be parking at Hadley? And I was like, I can't answer that. So, it was like, I heard it, so many folks brought that.
So
Wow, I didn't have one parking question.
so
Swear to God.
So to my earlier point where I poured cold water on RFIs a little bit, an RFI and temporary reuse of the Hawthorne is an interesting thing to me, because there's a universe that's much broader. We haven't even limited down potential 3 buckets of ideas. It could be the world. And I do think it would be interesting, Sean, to think about an RFI for temporary and say, because look, at anything that we're going to do there is going to take years of execution, right? We're going to work with our state and federal partners on funding. It's, so whether that building's there 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, I mean, I'm just putting up time for it. It's there for a period of time, and us putting an RFI out to the world and saying, this is what it can be used.
There may be a conversation that we want to have with the Athenases.
Or not at $2,000 a month, but maybe.
Understood.
But that's an example of it, right? For us to be able to do these things, but it may be another user. Maybe someone, people came up and said, oh my God, can you imagine having North Shore High School wanting to do their prom here? I mean, I'm not advocating that, but I'm just saying it's a grand enough space that maybe there's people that can use it as event planning space, or I'm making stuff up, but things that will keep the lights on, have someone being responsible to make sure the world's not falling
If the
apart.
town could have a few events here, if we have to raise money to try to help, develop that site or do other things, to me, it would make sense for us to have a partner that we could work with. But certainly.
So I'm sorry, I'm back to you. I really appreciate you saying what you said, bringing it up tonight. I really think that we've got to advance. I think, Neil, if you're okay, we have that one action item for you and I to reach out to the committee on.
Yep, we can reach out to them.
And then have it back here at a meeting for us to really talk about all of it, but I just wanted to prioritize the temporary side of Hawthorne, just because I think we've got to be asking town meeting probably come May, to maybe help us, or else we're going to be having a special town meeting before November, because if we wait until November, we're going to have an empty building.
So what would we have to do to put an RFI out for the temporary use of Hawthorne?
That's us.
To do?
That's us.
We just vote to do it?
Yeah.
And then we get 10 responses and decide to do something or nothing? And then
With the RFI, we can't take action on. The RFI is just information, so then you, from there, you do the RFP. Then you do an RFP.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Based on one of those ideas.
So at the risk of being too bold here, is it for Sean, ask staff to begin preparation of an RFI for temporary use of the Hawthorne, so that we're not starting from stop, right?
Not that bold. Let's do
Just again, we're not taking a vote or anything here, but just start that, just so there's a lot of background material and whatnot you got to put together on that, but just.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And make that a priority. Sure. And I would even go so far as, look, we have money in the Hawthorne budget for the acquisition, that if this is someone that we need to consultant, frankly, to work with us on producing that, it's going to be one of the best uses of money that we use. Sure. But I just.
We'll get going on it ASAP.
I mean, can HDR help us with that, maybe?
It's not in their scope, but I don't know if they do RFIs.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm sure they can do artwork and help us with visuals and stuff. I just don't, I'm sure there's groups that are probably better equipped to prepare, that actually, as a living, prepare RFIs.
But are we saying before we prepare an RFI, are you saying talk to the Athenases first?
I think we can do it concurrently. I think it's important for us to advance both these efforts. Peter, you're absolutely right. The biggest risk that we have is either one of those buildings getting mothballed for any number of months could absolutely destroy them. If you don't have, active maintenance, and it could be devastating. So we've got to figure this out. I did go through, frankly, the Hawthorne with our facilities director, and he has a long list of concerns.
Beautiful.
Great. All right.
That's what I want to hear.
Okay, so select board time. Anything?
Sure, I've just been working with the rec commission. We're looking to put a number of low-cost, no-cost events together. We should have a calendar of events coming. I've had conversations with Bentwater. I've had conversations with East Regiment, and all are interested and all are looking to.
St. Patrick's Day, or is that?
That may be a conversation that we need to have with the Athenases. So now that we're on the other side of the idea exchange, Sean, I'm happy to go have a conversation.
Yeah, I think, to me, it's anything that's going to help build community should be on the.
Now, do these go out for bid? Say you're bringing in you're bringing in a brewery or whatever, does that have to go out to bid?
No, we haven't gone out to bid for it, but, we could do that.
I just want to know legally, are we obligated to do that, or?
I believe we had a conversation with town council a few years ago before the first beer thing, and vendors, and depending on dollar amounts and whatnot, with vendors for food and beverage, you don't have to go to RFP on.
It's not big enough.
But, good question. Make sure we're doing it correctly, but we had that before.
Well, I just want to know, maybe there's some diverse breweries out there. I just want to make sure everybody has opportunity.
Absolutely, we'll look into that. And
I'd like to give you my list of preferred breweries.
I'm a big fan of diverse breweries.
I'm also a fan of people doing what they say they're going to do, and we've had conversations.
Yeah, you have
probably a dozen. And
Yeah, great partners. You've had great
yeah,
partners.
yeah, we've had
Well,
incredible
that's not to
partners.
knock the breweries that we've had involved
No,
at all.
no.
It's more to knock their IPAs.
Ah,
I'm just joking. I'm not at all. I don't drink any IPA.
Look, to me, it's, these events, they're important. The more no-cost, low-cost events, the more community. People need these opportunities.
Yeah, and Bentwater's been an incredible supporter
Absolutely.
of the town, and they've donated tens of thousands of dollars.
Proud to have worked with them. I think they have a civic purpose, and they've been great.
Yep, great.
Anything else?
I'd just like to thank Joe Dulett, and who's back there with you, Joe Dulett?
Andrew and Nathan.
Andrew and Nathan for another great production of the select board meetings.
Yeah, I want to thank Joe and Ethan and the students that helped at the idea exchange. I thought it was great to have you guys there as part of that, and it added a dynamic element to that event, so it was awesome. So thanks so much. You guys were scrambling around and wrangling wire cables, and it was a tight space, and there were windows everywhere, and it was great. And you guys were all, from students to Joe, were truly professional and awesome. So I want to thank you for that. And
Was that, did you have a roving reporter or camera, Gracie, with a camera?
Yeah, Gracie was going around just documenting.
doing the
Hey, Joe, can you speak into a microphone, please?
How dare you?
It's less funny now that we have to wait.
That's okay.
Now he's punishing
Now-
us.
now-
Now he's
now
keeping us here
Now
longer.
you have to wait. Absolutely. Yeah, Gracie was just going around kind of trying to get a feel for what it felt like to be there.
Oh, she's working really hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was
absolutely.
really terrific. I was really impressed.
And Nick at the Whispering booth was fantastic. People enjoyed talking to him. So
It's just great seeing our school kids out there, working, being part of our community. It's
yeah, they really
Awesome.
get involved in what the conversation is too. I think like there's a
Yeah.
student that did school committee yesterday and is really excited to come back tomorrow because she really wants to see how the conversation continues. So
Oh, it'll be exciting tomorrow.
yeah, great
great.
reasons for them to be involved. But our pleasure.
Thanks. I also just want to emphasize my gratitude to the staff who put that together. I mean, that event, there were like probably 400 people there, and we didn't know that necessarily. We were hoping there would be great
It was
attendance,
like
but
an estimate of
I think
25.
Marzi did the work of 8 to 10 people.
Absolutely.
Diane did an amazing amount of work. Sean and P. Kane, DPW workers were there. We had fire department there, which I'm glad you anticipated the crowd.
Yep.
TJ.
It was just a total team effort. It was great to see, staff, Amy and Patrick were there just to attend, which is just awesome. It just shows that they're interested in what we're doing as a community. And, I think, of course, we were all there. There were
Chief Archer.
a group of volunteers, Chief Archer. So it was just great to see everybody, and hopefully we can do more there, but also elsewhere, not just around that project, but just on all the good stuff that we're trying to do. So I just wanted to make sure I publicly thank everyone.
I'll share that with staff, but certainly, to me, it's one of my great, when we have events like this, it was great. 400 citizens in Swampscott getting a chance to be part of history, part of community, part of, a sense that we're giving a gift to future generations. And 50 years from now, they won't remember any of us, but they will remember that place that is created. And to me, that's an awesome legacy. You think of the generation that bought the Fish House, the Park and Rec Commission, over 120 years ago. What a gift, where would we be without it? This is going to be along those same lines. And it's really important that anybody that wants to be involved in this step up and share in that moment.
Very exciting. All right. If there's nothing else, if there's a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second? All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.